Still not quite getting the marks you deserve for those Jekyll and Hyde essays. Let's get you a bit closer to that grade 9. Schofield on Shakespeare.
You can skip to any of these sections by using the hyperlinks within the box below. A reminder, in this exam, you have 45 minutes, either to answer an extract question or an essay. In this video, I'm going to help you with a tricky extract question on setting. I've covered the mark scheme before in previous videos, so we'll whiz through it now. Outstanding understanding of the text, formal, accurate, engaging writing which focuses sharply on the question. Plenty of relevant, deliciously precise, embedded quotations. Probing of quotations, the language, form and structure. Subject terminology used accurately. And you weave in points about the context, which might be references to Victorian London, Victorian values, concerns about evolution, concerns about the decreasing role and relevance of Christianity, Darwinism or Freud. Plus 4 marks are available for the accuracy of your writing. Here's a delicious exam question for you. Explore how Stevenson used settings to create a disturbing and threatening atmosphere in this extract and elsewhere in the novel. And here's the extract taken from the chapter entitled Search for Mr Hyde. If using the Penguin Classics editions of the novel, you can find it on page 14. Press pause to read this through now. The video will resume in 5 seconds time. I've explored how to structure your main paragraphs in more detail in previous videos. Essentially, kick off with a sharp focus on the question. For this question, use keywords such as disturbing, threatening, or synonyms. Then back up your initial point with a juicy quotation, which you explore in detail in relation to the question. Finally, hoover up the high-level marks by developing ideas further, showing a more detailed understanding of the text as a whole and weaving in references to the context. Given that the question requires you not just to analyse the passage, but to refer to other parts of the novel, you may find some of these quotations useful, which give a good insight into the atmosphere in London for much of the novel. How might you incorporate and explore some of these quotations referencing the moon within your essay? Well, note the setting as Utterson walks purposefully towards Jekyll's house, following Paul's plea. This is an example of pathetic fallacy, with the wildness of the night reflecting the uprooted turmoil felt by all those who suspect Hyde may be pacing around Jekyll's laboratory. The wind is so strong that figuratively it seems as though it has toppled the moon. This apparent unnatural conflict within the elements reflects the unnatural disorder which has taken place on Earth within a small London laboratory, and adds to the unease the reader feels about what may have happened to Henry Jekyll. Talking of wind, there are plenty of other references in the rest of the novel, including those shown on screen now. Let's focus on an example in which wind is used as imagery. Utterson is back home after a disturbing visit to see Jekyll. He suspects that, for reasons unknown, Jekyll may be aiding and abetting that brutal, savage murderer, Hyde. There is a contrast between Utterson and Guest with their bottle of a particularly good wine and the chaos and disordered energy within the city as a whole. The roads and passageway of the city are referred to as great arteries, essential routes linking to the metaphorical heart of the city, whilst the noise is slightly chilling and overwhelming. Overall, The imagery here gives a disturbing sense of great collective unknown hordes of people roaming around a city which, within the same paragraph, is described as drowned. What about all the references to fog? Well, here's part one. How often is visibility obscured within this lurking city? Doesn't this reflect the reader and various narrators' lack of understanding about the outwardly respectable Dr. Jekyll and the exact nature of his scientific pursuits? And here's part two. With this quotation, is there a sense of the fog acting as a metaphorical barrier between the moral turpitude ever present within London, notably in the form of that evil Mr Hyde, and the hope and goodness of heaven above? The personification of the fog sleeping suggests its sustained presence, resulting in a lack of clarity and vision for those stumbling around in the near darkness on earth. And it is dark a lot in the novel, as these quotations testify. With this yellowed quotation, note the agency of the darkness, personified as re-invading. The context is that Utterson is taking the police officer to Hyde's house within a dismal quarter of Soho. He looks towards the area and is left with the overwhelming impression of dark triumphing over light, reflecting exactly what happens with Hyde's eventual domination and conquest of Jekyll. Enough wittering from me. Time to let you loose on writing your response. 45 minutes. The extract will reappear in 5 seconds' time. Press pause. Here's my response. This extract describes Utterson's determined quest to come face to face with Mr Hyde, the girl trampler named so unexpectedly in his client Jekyll's will. He finally comes across him at night. Stevenson's description of the lighting at this time of night result in a disturbing and threatening atmosphere. We learn that the lamps, unshaken by any wind, draw a regular pattern of light and shadow. The very stillness unsettles, just as the streets seem too clean for a Victorian context. So the absence of any wind creates a chilling quietness and sense of anticipation. Meanwhile, the antithesis of light and shadow emphasize the fact that while some things can be seen clearly, others cannot. Danger may be lurking in the partial darkness, and we already know that the man Utterson is seeking is capable of mindless violence. Additionally, at night, Utterson has been hunting for Hyde under the face of the fogged city moon. This furthers the impression of disturbingly partial visibility in this chaotic city, whilst the personification, the moon has a face, gives a haunting sense of human beings being observed from above. These references to light and darkness and nighttime are typical of the Gothic genre. Readers of the earliest Gothic texts, such as the Castle of Otranto and the Mysteries of Udolpho, will be accustomed to feelings of fear and the possibility of violence and the supernatural late at night. However, unlike with the earliest Gothic texts, readers can identify far more closely with the urban setting of London rather than exotic faraway settings in France and Italy, which therefore increases the unsettling nature of the setting. The near silence of the setting also contributes to the ominous atmosphere. Small sounds carried far, meaning that Utterson is able to hear what he correctly identifies as the approach of Mr Hyde long before he sees him. Stevenson notes that the steps drew swiftly nearer and swelled out suddenly as they turned the end of the street. Note the prevalence of sibilants, which create a hissing sense of anticipation that evil may be approaching. Indeed, the final 2 paragraphs are structured deliberately to build up suspense. We move from the sound of the steps to Utterson's perspective to to the description of Hyde before the latter is finally named in the final sentence of the extract. This delayed naming of Hyde helps create a more uneasy, unsettling mood, and is possible partly due to the way the passage is structured and partly due to the nighttime setting. The lack of people and poor visibility mean that sound will naturally be registered before sight. Dark, disturbing Gothic settings are found throughout the novel, including in the description of the Carew murder case. An eyewitness's window was brilliantly lit by the full moon. Here we can see a reversal of the role played by the moon in relation to the atmosphere. Whereas previously it built up tension as it clouded vision and made us fear for the safety of Utterson as he seeks out Hyde, in this chapter it shines brilliantly, meaning that Hyde's every blow and club can be captured in horrifying detail, thus creating a disturbingly violent atmosphere. Similarly, the sky is still bright with sunset when Utterson and Enfield catch sight of a depressed Jekyll sitting close by his middle window. On the one hand, this enables the pair to catch a horrifyingly crystal clear glimpse of Jekyll's abject terror and despair, with the adjective confirming the previously prosperous and outwardly successful Doctor's absence of hope, which the rereader knows is due to his transformation into Hyde. However, the setting here is also used to draw a contrast between Jekyll's home and laboratory, which houses evil, and the surrounding world and heavens. We learn that the court was very cool and a little damp and full of premature twilight, although the sky was still bright with sunset. Jekyll's egotistical experimentation and dabbling with evil have resulted in the premature, unnecessarily early loss of light and hope for life, which contrasts with the positivity and beauty of the natural world beyond. Arguably, many Victorian rereaders would have been even more horrified by the revelations about Jekyll's experimentation within that dark court, already disturbed by their interpretation of Darwin's Origin of the Species text as being anti-Christian. They would have viewed Jekyll's attempt to compartmentalize evil as heretical and similar to Victor Frankenstein's macabre processes. Stevenson creates a disturbing and threatening atmosphere throughout Jekyll and Hyde, resulting in a claustrophobic, uneasy text in which evil and violence seem able to flourish in the face of paralysing Victorian conservatism and convention. Now time to reflect on this response, either individually or within the classroom. How does it compare to your essays on Jekyll and Hyde? What does it do better? Is it slightly more sophisticated? If so, how? Press pause now. So how does this essay meet the criteria within the mark scheme? Well, AO1 is partly about answering the question. Notice how I use keywords from the question within my topic sentence within my first main paragraph, and talk about a very specific aspect of the setting, the lighting. AO1 is also about the quality of your arguments and how well you link your ideas. The fact that I contrast the way the moon is used in two different parts of the novel results in a more sophisticated argument. Note quotation length for AO2, invariably as short and precise as possible. I don't just explore in detail the effects of language, but structure as well. I'm interested in how the description of Hyde's arrival is structured to build up tension and create that oh so disturbing and threatening atmosphere. I use subject terminology naturally and accurately, and I weave in references to the context, mentioning the Gothic, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and Darwin's Origin of the Species. Reading through an exam board's comments on past student responses to Jekyll and Hyde, I was interested by some of these observations. Might a few minutes planning an argumentative thread before starting your essay help you achieve the highest marks for AO1? In this section, the examiner emphasises the importance of students choosing quotations extraordinarily carefully. The importance of knowing the text incredibly well is also stressed, although there is a dangerously reassuring point about the use of memorised quotations.
Summative thoughts. Well, that sharp focus on the question throughout and remembering to get the balance right between the extract and the text as a whole, perhaps a 50-50, perhaps a 60-40 split. Of course, you need to know the text really, really well, and that will help you both memorise and choose your quotations even more effectively. Remember the point about an argumentative thread? You need to make sure that you don't just state a point, analyse a quote, but actually there needs to be that degree of development of ideas, showing even more insight into the text. Hope it's been helpful. This has been Schofield on Shakespeare.